Hey up, Vinyl Monkey here again. 1973, North America. As you know, I've been splitting these into these years, these classic years from 70 onwards really, 69, 70 onwards, into British, European, Irish and North American top 10s, just to get more great records. I find it hard enough to do as it is. And one or two of the kind people who contribute to the comments on this channel have suggested that this year, 73, may be the last of those classic years, and that in terms of sheer number of brilliant albums, I mean obviously there's great albums out every year, but in terms of sheer numbers of them, that maybe 73 was the last of those classic years. But we'll see how it goes. But anyway, this is 1973 North America. A bit rushed this week because I'm off to very shortly, in half an hour or so, off to my country retreat for a few days at a caravan in the North Yorkshire Dales, so that should be nice. Maybe a bit of snow on the ground as well, so yeah, looking forward to that. But anyway, hopefully we won't make too many mistakes. So just to mention some that were just outside my top 10, didn't make it, but great albums nonetheless, as I usually do. Gram Parsons, GP. Gram Parsons, yeah, great country album. You know, one of the best country albums released in the 70s, I think. But just outside my top 10. Beach Boys. I think the Beach Boys. This is Holland. I think the Beach Boys made some lovely stuff in the early 70s. It was a bit. I think their stuff in the 60s, Pet Sounds maybe apart, obviously, was a bit varied. There was always some poor ones on the early 60s albums as well as some classics, but I think the 70s albums are much more consistent, and this is like Surf's Up from a year or two previous to this. This is a cracking album, Beach Boys, Holland. The OJs had an absolute brilliant album, Ship Ahoy. This is, I mean, I suppose provocatively, controversially, it portrays the OJs on a slave ship, and it's certainly hard hitting from this Philadelphia soul band in terms of the, you know, in terms of its social commentary. But nice stuff, the OJs, Ship Ahoy. Paul Simon. Another great album, There Goes Rhymin' Simon. Isaac Hayes continued his run of great albums in the 70s. This one's Joy. Billy Paul I mentioned before, and I'll mention again today. Ebony Woman, lovely album. Temptations had another cracker out, masterpiece. And then I just want to say a little bit about this album. This is Iggy and the Stooges, Iggy Pop of course, and this is Raw Power. And this album would have been up there. It might have even been my number one. It certainly probably would have been in my top 3. I mean, I'm an old punk rocker. I was got right into it in the first wave of punk in 76. I mean, the sound of the Sex Pistols and others at that time led me to smash up most of my LP collection I had at that time, a lot of which I've obviously rebought since. But you know, I was considering heavy metal and prog to be bloated and, you know, just out of date, and yeah, just only fit for smashing over your knee. And so this is a great punk record. It precedes the official punk scene obviously by about 3 years, but it is punk nonetheless. Search and Destroy, Gimme Danger, Your Pretty Face Is Going to Hell, Penetration, they're on side 1. Fantastic tracks, brilliant stuff. And I've seen Iggy live, and I've seen Iggy with the Stooges live playing some of these songs, absolutely brilliant. So why isn't it in my top 3 then? Because it sounds like a pile of crap. The sound and the mixing and the recording or whatever on this album, it's one of the worst in my collection. I did get it later on CD, hoping that might be better, but it's not better at all. I do think it's been remixed more latterly, and maybe that's better. Maybe I should look into that and maybe try and get another remixed or remastered copy or whatever. But this is bloody awful. The drums, you can hardly hear them. The bass is just a sort of fuzzy, muddy sort of sound in the background. The lead guitars and voice are too up front, trebly and spiky, and yeah, it's just a mess. And for me, sound quality is, whether it's an LP or a live gig, it's really, really important for me. One of the most important factors, I think. So it's a brilliant album. It's an absolute landmark album. One of the most influential albums with some great songs. Not in me top 10. It was actually mixed by David Bowie, who I've read somewhere that either he A, didn't know what he was doing, B, was using equipment that was out of date and obsolete, or C, didn't have enough time. It all had to be done within less than a day or something, and it might have well been a mix of all of those three. I've no idea, but anyway, it's a mess. So not in my top 10. So who was in my top 10? Well, at number 10 for 1973 North America, it's the brilliant, wonderful voice of Bobby Womack. Well, voice and musicianship. His guitar playing is gorgeous as well, but his voice is so rich and so luxuriant. I mean, in contrast to the album I've just mentioned, this one is so well recorded. This is Facts of Life. Your favourite track on here is perhaps the title track, Facts of Life, which kicks off side 2, which starts off, most of the song, 3/4 of the song is a sort of just a speaking sort of monologue, but you could listen to Bobby Womack read the telephone directory, as they say. His voice is just so beautiful, and the whole album is just an oral, A-U-R-A-L, pleasure. And if there's a weaker track on it, he covers Dylan and Hendrix's, of course, All Along the Watchtower at the end, a bit of a rock out at the end of side 2, and it doesn't quite fit with the sort of feel of the rest of it for me, but it's a great album nonetheless. He did some lovely stuff around this time, then came back in the 80s and did some more good stuff. But yeah, Bobby Womack, Facts of Life, number 10. My number 9, I've already mentioned Billy Paul. This is the second album he brought out in 1973. This is War of the Gods. Look at that for an album cover, isn't that fantastic? And then you look at Billy Paul himself inside, looking absolutely magnificent in his robes, like a prophet on a mountain top. Brilliant stuff. This is psychedelic prog soul. This is like nothing else, I don't think. Side 1, 2 tracks, I See the Light, and the title track, War of the Gods, both 10 minutes plus, and they're both just, I don't know, out of this world. They're absolutely just something different. I mean, Billy Paul is his standard sort of style, which you remember from his hit singles, presumably. He's got a lovely voice, but he's a bit sort of like a cabaret act. Well, this is nothing like a cabaret act. This is brilliant. This is Billy Paul, War of the Gods, number 9. My number 8. What an album this is. Oops, wrong one. This one. As soon as you hear those 3 or 4 I think, notes early on from Ernie Isley's guitar, it just conjures up sort of summertime, and it's an absolute joyous sound beginning to end, this album. This is the Isley Brothers, 3+3. The title of the album is because there are the Isley Brothers. Originally the Isley Brothers were 3. This is Ronald, the lead singer, or Kelly Isley, and Rudolph Isley. So this was the band, but then for this album they brought in their younger brother Ernie on lead guitar, a sort of Hendrix sounder like to some extent, but his own style, absolutely fantastic, and his prints are all over this album. I say he opens it with just this beautiful few notes of lead guitar on the first song, That Lady, yeah, the other younger Isley brother Marvin on bass, really good bass player as well. And then their brother-in-law, one of the brother-in-law of the band, Chris Jasper, on keyboards. So it became a 6-piece Isley Brothers band, and this is just brilliant. It's one of those almost perfect sort of pop soul albums. It's just a joyous, summery sound. It's my number 8, the Isley Brothers 3+3. My number 7. This one is absolutely gorgeous. This is Donny Hathaway. Again, really nice cover. This is Extension of a Man. Donny Hathaway is a gorgeous singer, but he's also a brilliant arranger and musician. He uses orchestration, although it's quite subtly used. And all the songs on this album, there are 10 songs on the album, and it's a blend of jazz, soul, blues, classical. It's loads and loads of variety both within the songs and across the songs, and that can be I suppose that can be a mixed blessing, really. I think if there's a slight weakness for me in this album, it's that it maybe doesn't have a dominant style or theme, so the tracks are very different in different styles, but beautiful nonetheless, brilliant. A really real talent that sadly he had mental health problems, Donny Hathaway. I mean, he's famous for his duets particularly with Roberta Flack, which are absolutely gorgeous, but he had mental health problems. I think he was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, and sometime after this album he'd had some bad schizophrenic periods, and he ended up he threw himself out of his 15-story flat and killed himself, sadly. But it's a great album. Testimony to his talent. Donny Hathaway, Extension of a Man. My number, where am I? 6 is Charlie Rich. A sort of country album, certainly country inflected. This is 11 brilliant, let's say, country style songs. In my opinion, Charlie Rich, one of the greatest singers of all time. Jazz, country, pop, rock. He's just got an absolutely brilliant voice. Apparently he was a really reluctant performer. He never wanted to perform. He wrote songs for other people. He was a session musician for other people. Lots of the big names, Johnny Cash, Roy Orbison, etc. He would write songs or play in the background. He was persuaded to perform his own songs, and he reluctantly agreed. But what a brilliant performer. His 2 biggest hit singles in this country, Behind Closed Doors and The Most Beautiful Girl, are both on this album. But all 10 songs on this album, 11 songs on this album, absolutely fantastic. He died quite young as well. The drink got the better of him. He did have a bit of a drink problem, but I always remember a quote from a Tom Waits song, because Tom Waits actually supported Charlie Rich when Tom Waits was just getting off the ground in the early 70s, probably around about this time, maybe a year or 2 before. But in one of Tom Waits' songs he says, radio spitting out Charlie Rich, you sure can sing, that son of a bitch. I'm not keen on that term, but it's Americanism obviously, but anyway, brilliant stuff. Charlie Rich, Behind Closed Doors. I think this is number 5. This is Lou Reed, Berlin. What can I say about Berlin, about this album? It's disconcerting, it's depressing, it's dark, sick, harrowing, bleak. I mean, the theme, the story is it's 2 junkies, get together, they're terrible relationship, abusive relationship, there's domestic violence, the kids are taken from them, taken into care, and ultimately I mean, it's misogynistic, it's awful, it's really, really is awful. And then the climax is where she, the female part of the half of the relationship, commits suicide. So it is just constantly bleak all the way through it. The music it goes from sparse to sort of string arranged stuff. It's really weird, but yeah, I was looking up some other reviews of this thing, and the great Lester Bangs, the brilliant rock journalist, he said in his review, he said this is Berlin is a gargantuan slab of maggoty rancor that may be the most depressed album ever made. So, you know, I couldn't, as I think I've said before, I wouldn't ever try to improve on the great Lester Bangs, but this is, oh, yeah, difficult, dark stuff. And it followed on from Lou Reed's commercial album Transformer, the sort of Lou Reed's glam rock album, which done so well. But I love this. I think this is high art of the finest sort. I think Lou Reed, who I've seen live, brilliant performer, was a true, genuine artist. And I mean, he said he deliberately wanted to destroy his audience with this. I think he'd become popular with Transformer, and he just wanted to attack and destroy his audience, and it certainly had that sort of effect. It didn't do commercially that well at the time, but I think it's absolutely fantastic. Lou Reed, Berlin. My number 4, and this is in contrast to that album really, because this one is just, I mean, it's lush, it's lovely, it's effortless, it's restrained, it's got lush strings, brilliant production. This is Al Green, Call Me. Al Green with his beautiful, beautiful aching voice, hardly gets it up above a whisper, and as I say, his band is just so restrained. You think they're going to sort of break out of that restraint, but they never ever do. It's just absolutely beautifully paced and beautifully produced by Willie Mitchell. But this is yeah, this is absolutely gorgeous. I mean, apparently this is Al Green's last of his real great albums. He'd had a run of them, 4 or 5 albums in the early 70s, where this was the culmination, perhaps the best. And following this, he had a terrible incident just after this was released, actually, where he was scolded by his partner. He was in the bath and she threw hot porridge or grits or whatever all over him, 3rd-degree burns. And then, as he was struggling with those burns, she took out his gun and shot herself. Following that, he thought he'd had a signal from God to go to the church, and he spent the rest of his life sort of singing gospel-y stuff. And but this is fantastic. Al Green, Call Me, my number 4. My number 3, this is perhaps one of my favourite albums in this whole collection to listen to. It's just an absolute joy. This is Daryl Hall and John Oates, Hall and Oates, and Abandoned Luncheonette. One of their earlier albums. It wasn't really critically or commercially recognised very well at the beginning. They became much more popular and famous later on than this, but I think this is by far their best ever work. The songs are just so good. I mean, it does contain their hit She's Gone, but every song on here, Had I Known You Better Then, Lady Rain, When the Morning Comes, Las Vegas Turnaround, just all of them, absolutely brilliant. And the sound on this album is gorgeous. It's just beautiful stuff to listen to. white soul, pop. One of those perfect albums, certainly one of my favourites in there. If I just want to feel good and have something you want to either sing along to or dance along to or something, then this is it. Daryl Hall and John Oates, Abandoned Luncheonette, my number 3. My number 2 is Marvin Gaye's Let's Get It On. And in contrast really to his last album, which was, what, 2 years before this? What's Going On, which was about social issues, environment, politics, racism, etc. This one is, well, what could I say? Is it about love, or is it more about lust? It's certainly about sex and making love, and it's just one of those albums that again it starts off with some characteristic sort of wah-wah guitar sound at the beginning, and it just takes you on this smooth, I don't know, like is it a warm bath is probably too, yeah, it's more than a warm bath. It certainly gets you going more than a warm bath anyway. But this is, it's just stunning, it's gorgeous, it's one of those brilliant albums where I couldn't even name you one of the songs. I suppose Let's Get It On was a single and a song on it, but they all flow into each other. It's an album which is just so coherent, you don't notice the joins between the songs. It's absolutely beautifully realised. It's silky, it's sexy, it's sophisticated, and it does all of that without being sort of tacky or cheap or sleazy. Lovely stuff. Marvin Gaye, Let's Get It On, my number 2. So it brings me to number 1, and I didn't want to put this one as number 1 because this guy was number 1 last year in my top 10 North America for 72. He's there again. This is Stevie Wonder, this is Inner Visions. This is even better than the one he came number 1 with last time in my view, which was Talking About Glass Time. This one is just fantastic from beginning to end. It's beautiful, it's timeless, it's lyrically and musically intelligent, and when I say intelligent I don't mean that in some sort of dry academic way. I just